My name is Raido Roop. Now I'm the head of strategy in the Tallinn city government. I have worked in Tallinn city government approximately 2 years by the end of this year. I manage like 6 bureaus. I have 51 people right now under my management. And before going to the work to the Tallinn city government, I worked in the Ministry of Finance 9 years. And my last position in the Ministry of Finance was the head of public administration and public service department. And I was the head of department 2 years. Before that, I was the deputy head of department 1.5 years. And before that, I was an advisor in the same department. And also before that, I worked in the Ministry of Finance 3 or 4 years in the state budget department as a strategic analyst. I dealt with strategies from the Ministries of Justice, Internal Affairs, Foreign Policy and Defense. Managed the strategic documents from these ministries. And before my career in the public administration, I worked in the private sector, I think in 3 different companies. I was 1 year head of development in one startup that was trying to create a personnel evaluation software, 360 degrees software, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And before that, I worked in a consulting firm. Now it's called Civita. It's a big company in the Eastern Europe. I was a consultant and I made some different projects together with local governments, some general plans, strategies, and some different analysis and development strategies. So, and by profession, what I studied in the university, I studied human geography and regional planning. And I have a master's degree in regional planning. So basically that's it.
Well, tell us about yourself and your family from where your origins were.
Yeah. By nationality, I'm an Estonian. My father and my mother are both Estonian. I was born in Tartu, in the second biggest city in Estonia, a university city. I graduated the university in Tartu also. But I finished high school in Põlva, in South Estonia, in a very small town, approximately 5,000 persons. And before the university, I was also in the military service in Estonia, in foreign Estonia, in Kuperjanov battalion. And now I have a wife and a 4-year-old daughter. So, and we are living in Tallinn approximately 11 years now. Before we lived in Tartu.
Wonderful. So tell us a bit more about one of your family members.
My father and my mother, they are retired, both of them. My father was a journalist. He was the head of a small magazine in South Estonia. And my mother is basically not a land architect. I don't know what the word in English is, but she dealt with different land use issues, and maybe I'll Google it. What is the right words?
Like
land manager.
Sure, yeah.
Landowner. She dealt with land ownership policy, basically.
Interesting. Very good. So let's talk a little bit about what you think makes a great public servant.
I think in Estonia, a great public servant, he or she has to have some mission-oriented approach. He wants to do something good for the society. Because if you're looking in Estonia, the higher educated people, then a little bit the salaries in the private sector are higher. And if you're working in the public sector, then you have to have some motivation or some mission-oriented approach. It's very strong, like in Estonia, in the military service. because of our geostrategic position and also in the internal security service, like in police and border guard and the rescue services, and also in medicine, I think.
And then correspondingly, what do you think makes a great public servant leader?
The leader must, he has to be a good manager, and I think he has to be a good people's person. You have to lead, you have to not be bossy, but you have to lead. Like you have to have a vision, you have to have a strategic goals, you have to describe the strategic goals to your teams, and you have to motivate the people. And you have to, what is one of my basic principles, I'll try to recruit smarter people than I am. So.
And
Yeah.
when you say have a vision, do you think that comes from within the person? Some people are born to be better public service leaders than others. Do you think that vision is something that is bound up with the mission that you were talking about? Or is it something that potentially can be provided to someone, gifted to someone, or trained into someone?
I think to have a clear vision and how to set goals and how to think strategically, you can teach it to somebody. You can learn it, I think, but there is something X factor that is given to you, because from my perspective, a great leader who has a great vision, he has to think quick, but he has to decide like wise and not so quick. Maybe small steps to the final decision. You have to decide some small step, and then you don't have to rush with the decision making, but you have to have a clear vision to the future. And that I think is the most important thing.
And do you think, now thinking back on your public service, your time at the public service department, what would you say was a big challenge that you faced as a leader? And sort of how did you face it and overcome it?
If time goes further, I'm getting older, and I think I'm gaining some new knowledge and some new experiences. And if I'm looking back to the time when I worked in the public administration department, maybe I was too young and too unexperienced to lead this kind of department. I think this is one key issue in Estonia, because we have a very few people, only 1 million Estonians, and the bench is very short and everybody matters. And this kind of department, which is like a horizontal department, or which has to shine like a great sun all over the different silos and ministries, this kind of person should be very experienced and very wise. And it was very difficult to find the right workers to this department. If I was the leader of this department, I had 15 persons, but I think the average age was like 38, 39 or something like that. Not every advisor and not every specialist in the department was the best in this field. But that's the situation in Estonia, because it's very hard to coordinate like personnel policy or public administration policy across the ministries if you are not the best in Estonia in what you do. But I think in the best gurus in Estonia in public administration field, they are working in the universities, in University of Tartu, in TalTech, in Tallinn University. And that's why it is very important thing to have a great cooperation with the universities. And that was the thing what I did when I worked in the public administration. I had, maybe you know, TalTech University, they have this Ragnar Nurk's Governance Institute there. And I had a good cooperation with two professors or lectors there, Tiina Randma-Liiv and Külli Sarapuu. And I also had a good connection with Mr. Sulev Lääne, a professor in Tallinn University. They brought some students annually to our department, and we had a discussion about the situation in Estonian public administration. I represented the central government sector, and in the Ministry of Finance, we have also the regional policy sector. And there is one regional local government policy department or governance department. And we made this kind of presentations to the students together. We explained them the local government sector and the central government sector. And it gave some good questions back also to us that we have to think about. Mix it up the practical like experience that we had in the ministry and the theoretical approach that the students and the professors had. And if you mix it together, then something good will happen. I think this is in Estonia, it's a very good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of people I work with are very interested in that integration between kind of external insight and public service practice. Can you reflect on how that was to work effectively? And can you also talk about how bringing people who you felt were less experienced in these issues on board to be excited about engaging with the external, because in some sense a lot of public servants that I've come across are not always super excited about external engagement because, as you say, it can be a little abstract, a little theoretical, and not rooted in the practical of what they're dealing with.
I think the Estonian public administration system, I think it is a position-based or position-oriented public service. It's not a career-based because if you are a public official or a free position for public officials, you always have to make a public competition. You cannot make a career that you can just get to the higher level. You have to compete always. If I was an advisor in the public administration and public service department, if I wanted to be the leader of this department, then they made a public competition and I have to compete with others. But if I mentioned before, the bench is too short, then if you have some experience in this field, then you obviously can win this competition because the gurus from the universities, they don't come to these competitions. They don't want to be a public official in the ministry. But now we have some good examples that, for example, in the planning department in the ministry, rural planning department in the ministry or spatial planning department in the Ministry of Finance, they had a very good person who came from TalTech University to work for the ministry. And that's why you have to support the workers in the public administration department, the advisors. And every advisor has the responsibility for this whole area of expertise. For example, we had one advisor for public service ethics, only one advisor in Estonian altogether public service, one advisor for recruitment policies, one advisor for salary policy, and one advisor for training policy. And if you are a salary policy advisor in the Ministry of Finance, then you're not alone, but you're responsible for this field. You have to make the salary analysis. You can get the data from the State Budget Department also and from the State Support Services Center, but you have to analyze it yourself. And you have to make the presentation to the government alone. And that's a big challenge, but also for young persons, it's a very good challenge and they want to accept it. They want to be better and they want to try to be good in this position. So you have to give them a chance.
And that because they're a little bit not alone, as you say, but kind of responsible, that encourages them to be open to external support, ideas.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And basically that's what you mentioned. They take new ideas on board easily. They are open to innovation, as you say. and they are open to different discussions, because if you're alone with your analysis or your policy area, it's always a good thing to have a discussion about someone who is interested in this topic. And that's why I want to mention, which is a very good network in European Union, is the EUPAN network, EU Public Administration Network. That's an unofficial network. It's like a talking room, but it is a very good network for knowledge exchange, to have some discussions, to exchange some ideas and make study visits, have contacts. I think it's a very good thing.
So still thinking about your time as head of the public administration department, did you ever think to yourself, when you think back on it, you sort of laugh because it was, you know, could almost be seen as, you think it was funny. It was a moment in your career where you kind of think back and are amused by what happened. And can you sort of tell us about that?
Yes, I don't know. Well, okay, that was one good one where I was crying firstly, but not literally, but after I left, because we have this like ethic advisor in the public administration, public service department, and we have this like national ethics or Estonian national ethics public service committee, who has dealing with maybe some concrete issues. Is that like ethical in public service? Maybe one issue was like, should army officials or internal security specialists can have tattoos on their neck? And then the ethics commission had a discussion about it, and they decided it's not okay. But you have to renew this kind of like document which creates the ethics committee. You have to renew it in every 3 years, but we forgot it. And there was a 1 year that in Estonia there was no official committee. And it came out in the government office, and then something bad happened then, but nobody was fired. We just we fixed it very quickly, but it was 1 year that we don't had an official public service ethics committee, so officially, legally.
Yeah.
So
and would you say that that's something that you feel that the individual that, you know, how did they feel? How did you manage that person when they realized that actually they hadn't undertaken a key part of state activity?
The public service ethics advisor was responsible for that, but I was her leader, and basically I was responsible. And because I was very unexperienced in that area, and I didn't know that this committee like responsibility expires in 3 years, and you have to renew the basic document in the government office every 3 years. I didn't know that. And there was some miscommunication, and if I found out, then I asked her, what is the problem? Why don't you tell me that? And she didn't have anything wise to say to me. She just said, I mentioned that to you, but you didn't understand. And then time went by. And if our Secretary General from the our Ministry of Finance asked me, Raido, where is the document for this ethics committee? I couldn't have an answer. I didn't know what document. And that is a big fail. I remember it. So that's why the previous talk about this, that if you are the head of public administration, public service department, then you have to have a lot of experience in public administration field. And maybe it is not a position for a 35-year-old guy. And now I'm 38, but when I started leader of the department, I was like 34, yes. It's a position for a very more experienced person, I think. So.
And then finally, thinking about your time there, what would be the 3 lessons that you draw out so that you could tell your grandchildren? So if you were to tell them, these are my 3 big lessons from public service, what would they be?
I think the first big lesson is that if you want to be a good person, then the salary is not the salary what you get is not the most important thing in life, because if you are doing something good for the citizens of Estonia and now the citizens of Tallinn, that matters. Especially if I got more thinking about or some philosophizing about this climate crisis, then what is really matters in life. Not the income, not the salary. If the salary is already in some level, if you have a good life, then if it's more higher, it's not a thing. And the mission-oriented approach and the motivation to do good to the citizens, I think this is the most important thing. And that's you can have in the public service. You cannot have it in private sector in every area. And the next lesson is analyze more, think more before you make the decisions. Why I'm saying that? Because if I joined the public administration and public service department as an advisor, then we had the first public administration minister in Estonia. Before we had only in the Ministry of Finance, we had only Minister of Finance. Now we have two. From 2015, we have Minister of Finance and Minister of Public Administration. And that was the time that we were starting with state reform and also with the local government reform. And what was the key issue to state reform? That we have to decrease the overall workforce in public administration. And how are we going to do it? We just consolidate the different public agencies. We can push through a few mergers, and then we can reduce the staff. We can cut costs from the support services, etc. But if you're not analyzing correctly, then sometimes you put together wrong agencies. And I think we have some bad examples also in Estonia. For example, I think not a good merger was that we merged the technical surveillance agency and what is the consumer protection agency. They are not fitting together. I think the lesson that we got from the police and border guard merger, we didn't learn from this. It's a very good thing about support services wise, but organizational culture, because there was this blue culture from the police and the green culture from the border guard, and it took like 10 years that before they had function like a one agency or one unit. And I think in the merger of technical surveillance agency and the consumer protection agency, it's not happening also in 10 years because they are not fitting together. Analyze more and then make the decision, because nobody analyzed this kind of thinking that which are the public services that you have to provide to the citizens. Just, okay, let's put two agencies together, let's merge them and let's cut the costs. But what happened? Maybe they cut some number of personnel, but they didn't cut the costs actually. So in some cases, the costs even got higher because they needed some new competences in how to manage this big. You need better leaders, you need better top level leaders, you need better middle level leaders, etc. That was the second lesson. And the third lesson is how you can be a great leader, because what is the most important thing that the leader has to achieve? You have to have some results, always you have to have some results, but you cannot do it alone. You have to have a team and you have to support and hold your personnel and your workers. That's the main thing. Human-centric approach also in public administration. it's not some general like stuff. They are like real persons with real lives, I think.
Raido, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.